Welcome to Pinches of Salt, mini lessons in language sample analysis. My name's Marlene Westerveld. In this lesson, we will look at dependent clauses. So we will cover why do we want to know about complex language, how to identify 3 common types of dependent clauses. We'll quickly look at how to calculate clausal density, and then you can test your knowledge, and all of that within 10 minutes. So it's an interesting quote by Marilyn Nippold. Complex thought drives the development of complex language. Just give that some thought. And perhaps we could turn that around. How complex language will help us develop complex thought. Now, interestingly, children start using complex sentences by 3 or 4 years of age. And then clausal density, so we'll talk about that later, is a key marker of later syntactic development into adolescence. Children with developmental language disorder, or DLD, may have specific difficulty producing complex sentences. So that's a good reason for evaluating complex sentence use when analyzing language samples, because language sample analysis can really show us how the child constructs sentences and what types of complex sentences they produce. However, I want to keep it simple. We're going to cover 2 steps. The first one is you will have to identify communication units. Now, if you need a refresher, then view the mini lesson on communication units. And then number 2, we're going to check for the use of finite dependent clauses only. And finite clauses or dependent clauses can be referred to as subordinate clauses as well. So we're going to use Nippold's coding procedure and only code those finite dependent clauses. That means those clauses will have a subject and a predicate. So then code the following 3 types of dependent clauses. The first one is relative clauses, and they add like an adjective and they modify the noun that precedes it. The second one is adverbial clauses, so they act like an adverb and modify the verb. It often describes a condition or a verb and begins with a subordinating conjunction. And the third one is a little bit trickier. They're nominal clauses, and they can serve as either the subject or the sentence, or its of the sentence or its object, and they often begin with WH words. So let's look at examples. First of all, relative clauses, and IC stands for independent clause and the RC is the relative clause. So number 1, and these examples are from a child who explained the rules of a game. This child said, but we have to hit the person who's doing that. So who's doing that is a relative clause, and it gives us more information about the noun, the person. The second one, and he brings me to all the games that I can go to. It's another relative clause. That I can go to gives us more information about games. And you've got lines where you're allowed to go up to. So again, where you're allowed to go up to is a relative clause. It tells us more about lines. And what you can see, they're all finite clauses because there's a new subject. So in number 1, who, in number 2, I, and number 3, you. So let's look at adverbial clauses. Now, to identify adverbial clauses, it's really important that you can differentiate between coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. So once again, if you need a refresher, just go to the mini lesson about C units. So this child said, and if they get the highest number when the game's finished, they win. So in this instance, there are 2 adverbial clauses. They win is the independent clause, and because if is a subordinating conjunction and when is a subordinating conjunction, these are adverbial clauses. They're finite because they have a new subject. If they, so they get the highest number, and the game is finished, they win. Number 2, and then once you've done that, we pull out the blue mats. So we pull out the blue mats is the independent clause. Once you've done that, it starts with the subordinating conjunction once. So that is the adverbial clause. And number 3, if you remember that and you don't get hit, you win the game. So you win the game is the independent clause. And if you remember that and if you don't get hit, we have 2 adverbial clauses. Then let's look at nominal clauses. So these clauses replace the subject or the object in the sentence. So sometimes they're a little bit trickier to identify. So in number 1, the child says, and whoever gets the ball gets to start with the ball in the center. So you could replace and whoever gets the ball with the person gets to start with the ball in the center. So and whoever gets the ball replaces the subject in this sentence. And it's a nominal clause. Number 2, and that is how they lose the game sometimes. So how they lose the game sometimes serves as the object in this sentence. And there's a new subject, which is they. And whoever finishes all their beads wins. That this again, it serves as the subject in the phrase. Whoever finishes all their beads wins. Who wins? Whoever finishes all their beads. So then once you've identified all those independent clauses and those dependent clauses, you can calculate clausal density. It's basically the average number of clauses, so main and subordinate, per C unit. So you count the total number of clauses and divide them by the number of C units. And we expect this to increase very gradually from 1.22 in grade 3 to 1.59 by grade 11. And interestingly, the steepest increase is seen in the use of relative clauses, and that's from a study by Nippold and colleagues. So now you've got a chance to test your knowledge. So you can pause the recording and fill these in yourselves. I'm going to look at the answers in the next couple of seconds. Okay, here are the answers. So in the first sentence, the girl woke up when she heard a noise outside. It's an adverbial clause because when is a subordinating conjunction. The cat that was sleeping on the couch was tired. It's a relative clause because that was sleeping on the couch tells us more about the cat. And there's a new subject, remember that. Unless you do your homework, you're not allowed to go outside. So you are not allowed to go outside is the independent clause unless you do your homework. There's a subordinating conjunction, so it's an adverbial clause. My mother, who is the principal of my school, takes me to school when it's raining. So who is the principal of my school tells me more about my mother. It's a relative clause. And she takes me to school when it's raining. It's an adverbial clause. When is subordinating. I told her what she needed to hear. So what she needed to hear is a nominal clause. I told her what? What she needed to hear. I never know who I should invite to my birthday party. So who I should invite to my birthday party again is a nominal clause. And often I ask these little questions. I never know what? Who I should invite to my birthday party. Number 7, a draw is when you both score 9 goals. This is again a nominal clause. It's a tricky one. A draw is when? When you both score 9 goals. I love sleeping in when it's winter. And here it's an adverbial clause. It tells us more about time and it's a subordinating conjunction. Now to finish off, did you know that the language sample elicitation context will influence the child's use of more complex syntactic structures? So for example, we found that children ages 7 to 17 produce more complex sentences in an expository retell condition when we're asked them to retell the game of curling compared to a generation condition where we're asked them to explain the rules of a game. So what we know is that more cognitively challenging tasks are more likely to elicit more complex language. So think back to Marilyn Nippold's quote. So for example, children, adolescents, and adults were more likely to use dependent clauses in expository than in a conversational discourse. So bear this in mind. If you want to elicit complex language, then use a cognitively challenging task. That's all we have time for. For more information, I will put a copy of the slides on my website. All these pinches of salt will be posted on YouTube, so you can subscribe to the channel, or you can get updates about new training, and you can follow me on Instagram. Thank you for listening.